Welcome, friends. And what we are going to talk about this episode is when you are deciding if you should get rid of your loved ones' clothing or different things that they owned, how to go through that process and all the struggles that come with that. So, thank you, friends, for joining back to the Grieving Nurse podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow, push all the buttons, do what you got to do. So this podcast can be shared with others. Today, I want to talk about that time when you need to start going through your loved ones' items of clothing, or maybe you have a whole house to go through, or an apartment, or even just a room or some items to get rid of, and all the emotions that can come up with those things. And so for me, what I noticed was so we had actually we were very blessed. We had a lot of time to go through my parents' house. And so my parents owned a house and we knew, or our thought process was eventually my brother and his family were probably going to move into the house, but they had their own house at the time. There was really no rush per se. His wife still wasn't completely on board with it, probably when we first started talking about them moving up to the farmhouse. And so we had time. She needed some time to process it. We also needed time because although my dad's death was more expected because it was following a cancer diagnosis after 10 years and he was on hospice, right? Like we knew that he was going to die. We knew the end was coming. With my mom, she was there one day and she was dead the next day. And so it was very, very unexpected. And a lot of what came with that was we were not ready. We were not ready to go through the items or to get rid of things because it feels like when you are going through these things and getting rid of them, it feels like you're losing that person all over again. And I don't know how to explain it better than that, other than like that's really truly what it feels like. It feels awful. It feels like you are choosing to get rid of them. Like the first time you lost them was through death. You did not choose that. The next time when you're going through the things and you're getting rid of things, it feels like you're choosing that. And it feels awful. It feels awful. And so what I noticed with it was just the different emotions that came up, the level of intensity at which they came up with at during that time, I was not prepared for. People would always ask, like, well, gosh, when are you going to go through your parents' house? Like, what's the plan for that? And we were just kind of like, we don't know. We don't know. We're just surviving. We're trying to get through every minute of every day. These feel like very huge, big decisions, and none of us can handle that right now. And then down the road, probably 2.5 to 3 years in, I was more ready to start going through the things as my family has been growing up and in different activities. It wasn't so much that I wanted to get rid of the things, it was just, it felt worse not to do it. It felt like this looming thing that was hovering over me that just felt like on my to-do list that I was never going to get to. And it felt more stressful for me that way. I think my sister was different. I think she would have wished for more time and to go even slower than we did. And I think at that point, my brother, I mean, I think he was maybe in the middle, but I also think he was ready to like also move on more. And they were ready then. They decided they were gonna, sell their house or rent out their house and then move up to the farmhouse. And so they were also ready because they were kind of in a state of limbo of trying to decide what to do. And so I say that because I want everybody to know that everybody's circumstances are different, obviously. And everybody, even if you're going through the same thing, like with your siblings, we were going through the same thing. We were all at different stages, and that's okay. And I think a lot of times for me, the frustration would come in when my sister wasn't as gung-ho to clean out the things as I was. And then my brother would be gung-ho one day and I wouldn't be ready to do it. So I think just you're navigating different people through a different stage of where they're at. all while very sad, all while feeling like you're losing your loved one over again. So there's a lot of emotions that come up. There's a lot of tension and stress. And I just want to say that that's okay. And it doesn't feel good. It feels awful, but there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the situation that you're in. That is just the normal, unfortunate side effects of death. Is that then all of these decisions and all these things need to be dealt with. And so what I want to talk about today is more of the feeling of how do you know that you're ready? And sometimes you don't have the luxury of time like I did. And some to some extent I would say maybe it would have been a little better if we had more of a timeline. So then it was like, okay, it's not this thing that like, well, whenever we get around to it, right? Because that's also not great when you don't have a deadline. Things can just be put off and procrastinated. Um, but sometimes, you maybe your parents or your loved one, sister, siblings, whatever, like maybe they were in an apartment and the apartment needs to be cleaned up by the end of the month, or maybe they had a house and you know, they were renting. And so it also needs to be out by a certain date, or, we need to sell this because we, all of us already own houses and there's a mortgage on this and nobody has the money to pay it. So we want to sell it for equity. And so knowing though, like everybody's in a different situation, I just want to say that you can make decisions that don't have to be final. And so let me explain that a little bit. You can make the decision that, okay, we're going to sell this house. And you can also make the decision to then rent a storage unit that's cheaper or disperse the different items, knowing that, okay, we're going to store these items for 6 months and then we're going to come back to it and then we're going to go through it. And so making decisions now with trying to see what time you have allotted and not wanting to feel like the pressure and the stress of if I make this decision, it's permanent. A lot of times, what I see is when people are going through clothing items that they don't want to get rid of them, they feel like it's a part of them, right? But you don't necessarily need them or want them. You're not going to wear them. Like let's say your wife and they're your husband's clothes. You're probably you might wear a shirt or two, but like you're not going to wear your husband's clothes day in and day out, right? So they're just there. For us, it was I wear like a couple of my dad's like flannel shirts, but my mom had a style that it's not my cup of tea. Okay. So like it's not my style. I'm not gonna wear it. Not to mention she was a different size than me. So the clothes don't fit me very well. So I'm not gonna wear them. However, when we were getting rid of the personal items like the clothing, the jewelry, the shoes, those were the things that really started to bring up those emotions of it felt like we're getting rid of this person all over again. It feels like we're going through their death all over again because these personal items, it is something in your brain makes you feel and believe like you're like it's so final. Let's say that. It makes it feel more final and more real that these things that this person used and wore and had almost every day of their life, now what? There's nothing. There's nobody to wear them. There's nothing to use them for. There's no purpose to keep them. And that feels very heavy and tragic. And so if you're in that place where you're not ready to get rid of their clothes, then don't. Put them in a storage unit. You can put them in boxes if you don't want to see them every day hanging in your closet. If you want to package them up and put them in totes, slide them under your bed, right? Like we do have the luxury, most of us, to have space, to have houses where, yeah, it might be in the way for a while, but I'm willing to have that uncomfortableness versus getting rid of this clothing and then I regret because I don't ever have it again. And so trying to understand these emotions that again, it is so normal for it to feel like you are losing this person all over again. And then to ask yourself, like, if I'm not ready, what can I do instead? Maybe I'm ready to go through the shoes, but I'm not ready to go through their t-shirts. Maybe I'm ready to go through the jewelry, like the necklaces, but maybe I'm not ready to go through the earrings. Like, what am I ready to go through? And what am I ready to do? If not, if you're not ready for any of that, then back it up a step and say, okay, I'm not ready to get rid of any of that. The thought of even getting rid of any of it makes me want to throw up. So I'm not ready. But what can, maybe there's like some papers I can go through, or maybe there's little trinkety things that we never looked at them for the past 40 years. Like we don't need them now, right? Start very small and very simple. And you can do that even if you don't have years to go through the things. You can start in that place and then work your way up. Even if it only takes a week to go through the smaller things, and then you're like, okay, that was a fast week. Like, I'm not ready to go through the clothes yet. So, what can I decide to do instead with them? And this is something that I help people with. I help you make decisions like this. I help you go through these things and think of different options that you never thought of, right? Because in our mind, it's black or white. I either keep them or I get rid of them. Well, maybe that's not the case for you. So we think of other options. We come up with another plan for you in the stage of grief that you're at, so you are ready for those decisions. The other thing I want to say with this, with the clothes and with all of the items, the biggest reason I find that people rush into getting rid of things is because they feel pressure from other people. Somebody maybe said a comment. It might not even be anybody that's very close to you, but they said a comment. And then you have thoughts about that comment, which makes you then feel a lot of pressure or a lot of stress or guilt or like you're failing, like I'm behind on this. And it's like, I just want to make sure that you guys know that there is no race with this. You cannot be behind. Okay. Grief is not a race. It is something that now you hold with you forever, and it's yours. It's yours to do with what you see fit. You cannot be behind in it. You cannot be failing. You cannot be losing the grief journey. And I hear so often, and I don't know where this ever came from, that, well, it's been a year. Like, who gives a flying beep, beep, beep? Okay. Who cares if it's been a year? Who cares if it's been 10 years? This is yours, and no one can take this away from you ever. No one will ever be able to take this away to an extent because you'll always have this little piece of grief with you now. And I'm not saying that to make it feel like, oh my gosh, like, oh, like it's never going to get better. It does get better, but it especially gets better when you decide and you determine what that looks like for you. Not based off of what other people have gone through, not based off of what people are saying to you who have maybe never, ever, ever gone through losing a loved one or multiple loved ones or any loved ones. They're just going off this fabric thing that was made up back when, that it's been a year, oh, it's been 6 months. That's okay. All right. What do you need in this time? And if what you need is to keep this person's clothes, go ahead, keep the clothes. But maybe it's causing you a lot of stress and anxiety, and you see them all the time, and it's one of those things that, like, every day you make yourself feel guilt and shame because you see those clothes. Okay, then maybe let's put them away in a different place. Or you're like, you know what? I really don't need 30 shirts of theirs. I'm going to go down, I'm going to get rid of 5. Okay. And just go through and see, like, my goal is to get rid of 5. If I feel like getting rid of more, great. If less, great. But let me make a little bit of progress. That way I can kind of shut my brain up and say, no, remember, we worked on that. Everything is fine. Okay. So again, there are so many feelings that come up when you are getting rid of items of your loved one. And I just invite you, if you want to come and book a call with me, 100%, please book a free grief consult call. We can talk through this. If you're like, you know what, I really need a lot of help with this. Again, book the call and then we'll talk through like my coaching plan, what that looks like for you, because then you can get help as you journey through that. And I really, really, really want you guys to hear my voice in saying that when these moments come up and when you feel like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, like I'm failing, it has been a year, what's wrong with me? Nobody else seems to be struggling this much when they've lost a loved one. When your brain starts to give you all of that mess, I just want you to hear my voice and I want you to take a deep breath and I want you to hear me say, no, this is exactly where I need to be. I am exactly on my grief journey where I need to be. I make the rules, and this is okay. All right. So I am praying for you guys. Please come and talk to me. I love talking to people, even if you never, ever, ever are a client of mine. Again, come and talk to me because for one, it helps you feel better. And two, it helps me because then I know what to talk about on my next podcast, or it gives me more, just a little bit more variety of like all the different levels of what people are going through. For instance, I've never lost a spouse. My spouse has not died. We've been together since we were 16, I think. So I'm sure when that happens, if he dies first, that'll be a whole new wealth of information that I have to share with others. But for right now, like I don't have that. So I would love to hear where you're at in your journey. You can always email me at nursegriefcoaching@outlook.com. But until the next episode, I am praying for you guys and I hope that you have the very best possible day that you can.